Well, everyone, we are going to get started. My name is Katie Metz, and I'm with the National Disability Institute. We thank you for joining us today for our 2012 webinar series. Today's webinar is being sponsored by Bank of America. Just over a few quick housekeeping tips, and then we will get started with our presentation. This is part two. Part one, we had an overwhelming response, so we want to make sure we leave plenty of time for our presentation as well as questions. So if you're listening to the webinar today, the audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. Make sure your speakers are turned on, your headphones are plugged in. Note you can control audio broadcast via the audio broadcast panel. And if you accidentally close that panel, you can reopen it from the top menu item by selecting Communicate and Join Audio Broadcast. Listening to the webinar today through the telephone, because you do not have sound capabilities on your computer, or you just prefer to listening by phone, you can do so by dialing 1-877-668-4490. And you can see on PowerPoint today, if you're online with us, the meeting code is 963-799-86. You do not need an attendee ID. Please lower right hand of your screen. We have closed captioning available for participants who are deaf or hard of hearing, or where English might be a second language. You close this down if you don't want to see it by minimizing that multimedia window. Or you get larger by minimizing the windows above it, the chat window, the Q&A window, or the panelist window. If you experience any technical difficulties during the course of the webinar, use the chat box to send a message to Nakia Matthews or email Nakia at nmatthews@ndi-inc.org. For Q, we'll use the chat window or the Q&A box to send your questions to myself, Katie Metz, or Nakia Matthews, and we'll have our presenter, Sharon Brent, answer them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. If you're listening by phone and not logged into the webinar, you're welcome to email your questions to myself, KMETZ, at ndi-inc.org, or again to Nakia at nmatthews@ndi-inc.org. Please, the webinar is being recorded, and the materials will be placed on our National Disability Institute website, www.realeconomicimpact.org. We will give you that website again later, and as we had stated on part one, we will have recorded and archived both part 1 and part 2, which is today, and they will be posted sometime tomorrow on our website. Once again, my name is Katie Metz. I'm with the Real Economic Impact Tour program with the National Disability Institute, and I welcome you today. The National Disability Institute, if you're not familiar with our work, is a national research and development organization with the mission of promoting income preservation and asset development for persons with disabilities to build a better economic future for Americans with disabilities. Which is one of the senior programs at the National Disability Institute, is to build disability-inclusive free tax assistance, financial education, and asset-building opportunities for individuals with disabilities through our trusted network. If you know more about the Real Economic Impact Tour and National Disability Institute, one you can do so by visiting our website at www.economicimpact.org, or you're welcome to email any of us at any time. We'd like special thanks to our sponsors. Without them, our work would not be possible. If you're joining us on the webinar online today, you'll see their logos here. We have Walmart, Bank of America, Accorda, Institute for Economic Empowerment, the Burton Institute, and of course our partners at the IRS. I'm going to go ahead and get started. As I said, we've had an overwhelming response to today's webinar for part 1 and part 2, and we are so honored to be able to have Sharon Brent, who is a national expert on public benefits and federal legislation that takes place around our country regarding persons with disabilities. Many benefits out there for individuals. And we all know that the system can be also Social Security and Medicare and can be very confusing. And so we're very lucky to have Sharon with us today. Sharon is the Director of Training and Technical Assistance with the National Disability Institute, and she's very knowledgeable, and we thank you for being on today. So Sharon, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Once again, if you'll save your questions, go ahead and type them in the Q&A and the chat boxes, and direct to either myself, Katie Metz, or Nakia Matthews. And as we move forward, we will make sure we record those questions and get them to Sharon in the last 30 minutes. So Sharon, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point.
Thank you very much, Katie. Everybody, I hope that I didn't send anybody off when we had our call last week. I know it was a very intense amount of information, but be assured that all the questions are going to be answered. I will also let everyone know I was on vacation for 3 days, so if you had any questions that were not answered, they're going to be answered during this week after this call today. Before I actually get started with today's series, I just want to do just a quick reminder about the two programs that we talked about last week, just so it's a refresher. There were two benefit programs we talked about that are provided through the Social Security Administration. The first one was the Social Security Disability Insurance. In order to qualify for that, you need to be both medically eligible and have a work history in the Title II trust. There are no asset limitations in that program, so when someone who is on disability insurance and receiving a payment, and then the medical insurance that they're going to be offered, which is connected to this program, is Medicare insurance, neither one of those programs, either disability insurance program or the Medicare program, has an asset limitation requirement. So that's the big piece that's different, as well as the work history piece. With supplemental security income, the SSI program also is administered by the Social Security Administration, and it has a medical eligibility requirement, the same requirement that the disability insurance program has. The big difference with DI and SSI is the asset limitation, or the financial criteria that is also required to qualify for supplemental security income. So those are two key components on which we are now going to take and add the asset piece of this, and how you can interface with the Social Security Administration to benefit programs for people with disabilities, and how you also can start to acquire assets, earn wages, which we talked a little bit about last week. So the objective is to understand the Medicaid Buy-In programs that belong to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's one piece. The Earned Income Tax Credit, which is an Internal Revenue Service program. At building programs, the big one for protection, with specifically the SSI program, so that you can save money and still be protected against the resource limitation, is the Individual Development Account, better known as the IDA program, and it is run by the Department of Health and Human Services. The other one is housing support, which is more known to folks as the Section 8 voucher program, or specifically living in what's called HUD-owned. HUD is the Housing and Urban Development federal program. And the last one is the Employee Tax Credits, which is of value to both the Department of Labor and operated by the Internal Revenue Service. So those are the objectives for today. How those pieces of asset programs interface with the benefit programs from the Social Security Administration. Again, the policy confusions are very acute because people have different understandings, and a lot of times individuals who are on the public benefit programs or the employment programs, such as the Social Security Disability Insurance Program, sometimes don't actually know which cash payment they're receiving, or they also may be eligible for other programs they're receiving and not actually know they're being supported. Either someone else has applied and received the eligibility for an individual, or the individual has enough documentation to help them realize the kinds of programs that are supporting them, in order for them to both have an economic capability, but also be able to go out and have the health insurance that goes with it that could support the disability. So when proven unable to work, which we just talked about as a review, with both the Social Security Administration's Disability Insurance Program and Supplemental Security Income Program. You have to be medically eligible, which is this first bullet on this looking at, and the other one is the continued eligibility for the public benefits only if total assets remain under $2,000. So again, this particular bullet, just as a reminder, belongs to Security Income, the SSI program, and when you're eligible for SSI in a state, you also are eligible to qualify for Medicaid, which is the health insurance that goes with the federal program SSI, administered by the states that people live in, and that has the same financial requirement in most states as that $2,000 limit as well to maintain eligibility. And then how we actually go about remaining barrier-free, trying to help Americans with disabilities have the same asset accumulation and an economic stability that other Americans have without disability. So that's how we're going to look at the subject that we're talking about today. You can see here the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1999. This is a reminder. I'm going to think that folks have interfaced with this at some point or are very aware. If not personally, then the barrier that I can tell you exists because of this are your curb cuts that you see over the country in most cities and any kind of new construction that is taking place looks at barrier-free, and also it provides full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for individuals with disabilities. The Disabilities Act also is looked at is limiting the unnecessary expenses resulting from dependency and non-productivity. So when you think about individuals who are held to a certain level of eligibility, and the biggest one that people are most aware of is the issue with the $2,000 limit for an individual who is 18 years or older in their asset accumulation, and for people who are married, the limit for asset accumulation if they need to be on public programs is the $3,000 limit. And that limitation applies to multiple programs that people might need to attach themselves to, but the big ones are the SSI program, the Medicaid program, Section 8 housing program, your SNAP, which is your food stamp program, even folks that are on temporary assistance to needy families may not be disabled but have limitations to their resource limits. A lot of programs that folks go after are limiting their ability to have asset development. We are going to enhance your asset building. We're going to earn it, claim it, and how do we go about keeping it? And that's how we're going to look at each one of these pieces today. The SSI Work Incentive Program and wages that we earn have quite a few programs that enhance your economic capability and also protect your Medicaid. We talked a little bit about these. I went over them quickly, I know, so I wanted to let you know again that there are other advantages of utilizing the work incentives that SI's program identifies, not only to be maintaining the eligibility to your SSI cash payment, also your eligibility to Medicaid, but also you can accumulate your resources under these kinds of programs. So one of the ways to enhance your earning of your wages is utilizing that student earned income exclusion. It does have its limitations because it has requirements that someone be under the age of 22, attending a school full-time, either in the classroom, it could be a trade school, so you could be going to a technical school, you could be going to a community college, you could be going to a university, you might even still be in the public education system under what is called the individual education plan or an individual transition plan, and part of that programming might be going out and trying to become employed, knowing what it's like to work, putting a resume. So that's one of those programs that's protected. And when you apply for this, you're able to earn quite a bit of money a year on a basis and still continue to keep your entire cash payment that you're receiving from SSI. And again, a reminder, the 2012 federal benefit rate, the maximum anyone can get from the federal portion is $698 a month from the SSI payment. And again, reminding you that if SI is going to give you that full $698 from the federal benefit, they have looked at everything else that you might qualify for in a month before they give you that $698. If there's nothing else that touches you every month that you receive in an income or unearned income or in wages, then you're going to qualify for that $698. But if you are receiving things other than SSI, or qualify for an SSI payment. So if you're receiving unearned income, Veterans Administration benefit, wages, that will affect the amount you're receiving from that federal benefit rate. Now, there are two programs that look at supporting you when you have out-of-pocket expenses. If you look at the first one, which is the second bullet on this slide, it's the blind work expense. So if someone who qualifies under those regulations and they have out-of-pocket money that they're spending out of their own pocket for supporting their living or any out-of-pocket expenses or their disability, they can get credit from formula calculation that we looked at for their out-of-pocket expenses. And if you go down and look at the first, second, third, fourth, fifth bullet in that slide, the other program that is similar to this that belongs to all other disabilities other than those that under the blind category is called the impairment-related work expense. And these also are credits that someone can receive when they are spending money out of their own pocket to support their disability in order to be able to earn the wages. And I had given to you a few examples. It might be specialized transportation. It might be co-pays for medication. It may be paying a coworker for their mileage to help support the gasoline because you're unable to drive on your own. So you're looking at what supports the disability in order for you to earn wages that someone is paying for out of your own pocket. Okay? That is money that you can actually also get credit for. You also have, if you go to the third bullet, Plan for Achieving Self-Support is actually a savings account that you can qualify for to allow you to save money to help you reach an occupational objective. And the money that you're saving for is to pay for things that you would need to pay for in order to reach your occupation. And it's going to vary depending on what the occupation might look like. An example would be, say you wanted to be a certified nursing assistant. Well, most of us will know that you have to go to school, either a trade school or maybe even a community college. You'll have a cost expenditure of maybe books and supplies, tuition. You might need a laptop computer. You might have a transportation need. You might need to pay for a tutor if the school is unable to provide it. So those are things that you would have expenditures for to help you pay, to help you reach that occupation of becoming a certified nursing assistant. The Social Security Administration Supplemental Security Income Program has a very special program called Plan for Achieving Self-Support. It's administered by SSI. It's monitored by SSI, and it is excluded from counting against that $2,000 or $3,000 resource limitation. So that's another way that someone can start to save money in a protected program above and beyond that asset limitation. It is a federally recognized program, so it's also protected from counting for food stamps, for housing, vouchers, for your Medicaid program, for any other kinds of monies that someone would receive. It's a federally protected program, and it would not count against those resource limitations for all those other federal programs. What that's right underneath that is called Property Essential for Self-Support, and it also is a resource protected program. So, for instance, let's say someone has a small business and they have a bank account that's designated for their small business. That account can be protected under Property Essential for Self-Support, and it would not count as a part of that $2,000 or $3,000 limit because it's protected under this particular work incentive. It's a protected savings account, but it also is very specific to what the money is being used for, and an example would be a small business account. So it would be a protected program. The other one is calculating the value of work. Someone may not have the same kind of formula that SSI is counting or SSDI is counting in order to identify money that is being supported to someone in order to help them earn their wages because they're unable to earn their wages on their own. I would say one of the other programs that belongs to SSI but affects a Medicaid program that is state operated is an individual who is earning enough money in wages. So that's a key component to the rule for this one, is it's a wage reduction issue so that they are formulating the wages that someone is earning, and you remember that formula, minus 20, minus 65, divide by 2, that belongs to the SSI program, and then they adjust the SSI payment based on the wages that they're counting. So let's identify someone has earned enough wages to zero out the federal benefit rate of SSI. You're able to then apply for 1619B belonging to SSI that would allow an individual to maintain SSI eligibility and Medicaid eligibility even though you're not getting a cash payment from the SSI program, but because of the wages that you're earning. So, and every state in the union has a different threshold, a different annual amount that you're able to earn in gross wages that will maintain the state Medicaid that you're receiving connected to the SSI program. Now, again, I encourage folks, given the complexity of all this information, to utilize the Social Security Administration's website as a continuation of accessing and informing you in more detail about these wonderful programs that people can utilize when they're interested in earning wages and also earning savings program that helps them reach their goals that they're interested in accomplishing. Medicaid Buy-In program is a program that probably is a new or the newest door into the Medicaid system that states created to allow those individuals who meet the definition of disability, who are interested in earning more wages than 1619B allows in a state and allows more asset accumulation. So it is a different door into Medicaid that states are allowed to create under the Ticket to Work Work Incentive Improvement Act of 1999. I'll tell you that most states today have developed these programs, and they're called different kinds of names. But the federal term is the Medicaid Buy-In program. So if you were to go onto your state websites and you were to put in Medicaid Buy-In as a search for the Medicaid system's dollars, you would look to see that there may be a program that is the employment of individuals with disabilities as an example. Medicaid Works is another example for a name in another state. So they have different kinds of names. The access to the Medicaid program is different than the access to Medicaid through the SSI. So again, needing to be aware that there are multiple doors that states have that enter them into the Medicaid system. Every door the states have different criteria of eligibility. So SSI is one of those eligibility criteria into a door to Medicaid. Medicaid Buy-In could be another door into Medicaid in the state. Temporary assistance to needy families is another door into a state Medicaid program. Each one of those kinds of Medicaid programs have different criteria. So you have to understand that every state's going to have different objectives, resources, and they each have their own criteria. So, but I would encourage you to go to your state websites to get more detailed information on the Medicaid Buy-In in your particular state. It is, again, and you can see here on the second bullet, at this moment in time, there were 39 states in 2008. I can tell you that from 8 to 12, there are about 45 states now that have the Medicaid Buy-In. There are states that are still working on it, but it is, it's a cost to a state. It's a state legislative process, so it becomes very political and very financially feasible for each state to develop their programs. And every state is looking at it. Every state has not got a Medicaid Buy-In program. So again, I encourage you to go to your state websites to determine that. How do you claim? That's what we'll do next. Income tax credit belongs to the Internal Revenue Service. This program has been around for many years, and it hasn't actually been something that people with disabilities tend to go after, because most of the time either they did not want to make themselves visible to the Internal Revenue Service or to SSI due to the concerns of earning wages. I can tell you, people who are earning wages who want to, one, file a tax return and get their returns back because they paid in too much tax, the other program that I encourage folks to apply for is the Earned Income Tax Credit. And you can see in both this slide and in the next slide what the requirements are for applying and getting that Earned Income Tax Credit refund that people who are earning wages are entitled to. You can go into this website, filing status. You can be married, you cannot be married, you can have children, you might not have children, and it's going to vary depending on your wages and what your family makeup looks like. So it's important that you go into the Internal Revenue Service website, open Earned Income Tax Credit, and it will tell you what the current year's numbers are. And if you are hearing this for the first time, some of you, I would tend to think most of you are not, but you've understood that the Earned Income Tax Credit exists. You can go back for up to 3 years and claim your Earned Income Tax Credit in your filing, and you can also do an amendment, a tax amendment, to file for your Earned Income Tax Credit if you had not even done so in the tax year of 2011. There are also individual systems, volunteer income tax assistance program that will help low-income wage earners, and be aware that the Earned Income Tax Credit is for people with and without disabilities. This is not a disability program. This is an earned income, low-income wage program. So you can apply for this, and also it's important to be aware of the fact that there are valuable resources in all communities across the country that have free tax preparation for people who meet the criteria, and they are certified tax preparers, and they're called VITA volunteers. So it's the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. And in order to find out what your local program looks like or where the locations are, we've given you a 1-800 number here. And again, I encourage folks, if they did not file for the Earned Income Tax Credit, you can always go and have an amended tax return done, and you can go back and file for that Earned Income Tax Credit. So I encourage folks to call this 1-800 number if they're interested. Work Opportunity Tax Credit is the federal tax credit available to all private sector businesses. This is a value for the businesses to get a tax credit when they're interested in hiring people for gainful employment with disabilities. So it's encouraging the employer, and it's giving the employer value when they actually look at hiring. You can see other tax credits, education workforce training programs that help Americans workers with barriers to employment. There are ways that employers can get credit for helping folks with disabilities or with barriers to employment, help them get employment, and the employer is going to get a tax credit for doing such a thing. The temporary assistance to families is part of that. Again, that is for individuals who may not have a disability but who are low wage earners, or because of their family situation, they haven't been able to get jobs or they're not trained. So it's important to realize that a lot of these programs are for underserved individuals, not just individuals with disabilities, but also for workers who need more employment support and training and education. Qualified food stamp recipients could be designated community residents. So it's important that there are lots of different categories in the work opportunity tax credit that people can access. I encourage you to go to some of the websites that we've identified here and be aware that from year to year there are different amounts of wages. So usually it increases every year that you're allowed to earn more income, and each year, come January 1, most of these programs identify what those new annual amounts are. So I encourage you to be aware of these websites so that annually you can get all of the new financial income information at your ready fingertips, so you don't have to wait or you're concerned that the numbers may not be correct. You can also see that the Qualified Veterans Program is part of the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, and so is the Summer Youth Employee. So it's important that they are aware that employers are also going to look at those kinds of employees that they may hire, even if it's a temporary employee. So it's important that the employers are aware. And sometimes employers are not aware, and you can become the educators to the employers on these programs and the availability of these tax credits, which would then encourage folks, employers, to hire individuals in these various categories for employment. Rehabilitation also has a referral, qualified ex-felons, SSI recipients. So each one of these categories has different kinds of work opportunity tax credits for those employers. And it's important to be aware that a lot of these are programs that employers are not aware of. I will tell you that there's documentation that needs to be filled out. Sometimes they are resistant to go there. They're not interested in dealing with those rules and regulations that apply to all of this, but there are a tremendous amount of employers that are, and these are ways that employers can be incentivized in order to hire your underserved populations. Now you keep the wages, keep assets, and be protected. And Social Security work incentives, there are no asset limits. And that's a reminder. The Supplemental Security Income Program, the resource limits remain $2,000 and $3,000, depending on whether you're an adult 18 years older or you're a married couple. So again, that is a reminder to you. The Protect Savings options, again, are SS Plan for Achieving Self-Support, which is helping someone reach an occupational objective. Federal Individual Development Accounts, better known as an IDA program, and that you can save under an IDA program for home, for education, or to help start a small business. The Family Self-Sufficiency Program, which is part of Housing and Urban Development Program. And there are also programs that are outside of those that are must be approved by SSI in the areas of trust. So how families start to provide for when they are no longer here to their family members, whether they have a disability or they don't have a disability. A lot of times families put those pieces together. Those are legal documents, and there are various kinds. A little bit about the Plan for Achieving Self-Support. There's some slides that will give you a little bit more detail on exactly what the purpose of it is. It allows a person to set aside unearned income. They're never allowed to set aside SSI money. But if you're earning wages and SSI is going to allow you to save, you could save in this Plan for Achieving Self-Support income that SSI normally counts. And when you save this money into this Plan for Achieving Self-Support, it's approved by SSI, and then SSI won't count those wages. It would then increase someone's SSI payment because they're no longer counting the wages because SSI is allowing you to save those wages in this Plan for Achieving Self-Support. The same rule applies if someone who's on disability insurance benefits. Remember, remembering every month that SSI is required to look at everything else someone is receiving. So if I'm receiving an SSDI payment, SSI is going to look at that and count it and reduce my cash payment from the SSI amount. If I write a plan for achieving self-support and I want to use my disability insurance payment in order to save in this plan for achieving self-support to help me reach an occupational objective, this plan is approved by SSI. They, okay, you can use your DI money to save. When you do that, SSI then will not count that towards that monthly cash payment of SSI, so your increase in your cash payment will occur because SSI is not going to count your DI because they're allowing you to save it to reach an occupational objective. Another way to look at this. It's a program for the person. It is very heavily monitored by the SSI, but here is what a plan must entail. It has to have a work goal, a very specific framework for time to reach the goal. It shows what money you're going to contribute to this, and I just gave you 2 examples. Wages can be contributed to this. Disability insurance payments could be contributed. Let's say you know that you're getting ready to get an inheritance from someone who is passing on, and again, you're concerned that this is going to affect your eligibility. That might be something else that you could set aside that will be protected in this plan for achieving self-support and not counted as a resource. So these kinds of savings, I've given you a few examples of what you could save for. The plan must be submitted in writing to what's called the PASS cadre. Those are regional experts who work for the Social Security Administration. If you're looking and you're interested in a small business, then in order for you to have the plan approved, you also would submit a small business plan in order for that to look at the value, how long the business, how long the business plan is going to generate a surplus to actually where you're going to make money. So they actually want a full-blown small business plan if that is what your occupational objective is, the goal that you're trying to reach is going to accomplish. The plan will be reviewed periodically. I will also tell you that it is a working document, so it's not carved in granite. If you need to make changes to the document as you go, you can do that as long as you submit everything in writing. And the purpose is to help decrease the amount of the SSI cash payment and hopefully eventually get you off benefits altogether. But it's also helping you save money in order to pay for things to help you reach your occupational objective. It's a full program for the right person. We've all given you here different kinds of web addresses to help you understand and also get additional resource information on how to write a plan for achieving self-support. You can actually even do the filling out of the forms on the Social Security Administration's website. You also have the University of Montana's Rural Institute. So we've used a lot of different resources of programs that have put together great manuals and tools to help people understand how to write a plan for achieving self-support. So we encourage you to go to those resources as well. The Department of Health and Human Services has what is called the Individual Development Account. And this is considered a matched savings program. And you can see here that it is encouraging saving money and building towards asset accumulation. The IDA provider, which is a partner with financial institutions, foundations, churches, any of these kinds of folks can be programs. And they then would usually have a rate of savings against an individual savings of either $1 to $8 for each dollar that an individual saves. Now, a program provider who applies for the federal money actually would then be required to go after a matched private dollar. So, for instance, I'm a provider. I apply for the federal money, and I get $50,000. It's going to be my responsibility as a program to go out and find another $50,000 of private money. Once I have both the federal dollar and the matched savings dollar from private sources, I now have $100,000 in the program to start looking for participants. And so you would then be able, and you have rules and regulations that you're going to submit when you apply for the federal money. But then this is a protected program. So you can see here it will not negatively affect your eligibility to any of the food stamp programs, the Social Security, Disability, SSI program, Medicaid, HUD housing, NF, temporary assistance to needy families. None of those programs will be affected when you are involved in an individual development account savings program. Three items that a person under the federal IDA program can save for. I can save for a home, I can save for higher education training, and I can save to develop a small business. So one of the biggest criteria that people need to be remembering is that you can only save money as a participant from wages that you are earning. So you could not save SSI and have it matched. You could not save disability insurance payments and have it matched. It must be wages. Now, I will also tell you that receiving an earned income tax credit is considered a dollar coming from a wage. A tax refund would be considered coming from a wage. So those kinds of dollars could be saved and matched through this program. And you hear some local, some websites, federal websites, for you to determine whether there are any programs in your geographic area. So that would be another piece that would be important for you to be aware of as a learning tool. Have another program that is protected, and that is the Housing and Urban Development Family Self-Sufficiency Program. And this program encourages communities to help individuals and their families who are receiving housing choice vouchers, either as a rental subsidy to set aside for employment goals and advance their self-sufficiency. It also looks at public housing agencies, or there's also another program sometimes, it's called public housing authorities, to provide administration of these programs. It actually was established in 1990, so it's been around for a while, and it's a contract that is developed with a family outlining goals and services. The program may include, but are not limited to, so it's important that you see this is just a laundry list. This is not an all-inclusive list. To set aside for child care, for counseling, transportation, household skill training, education, job training, and home ownership counseling. So it's important to realize that this is a great program, and this is for people with and without disabilities, so it's not specific to disabilities. It is part of the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, and we've given you a website also here to find out more about it. We're now going to talk a little bit more about the different kinds of trusts that might be protected trusts in order for people to accumulate money for the future, to provide things that give someone a quality of life that maybe some families are providing while they're here with their family members, and later on when they're no longer here, who picks those kinds of things up? That would be something that might be provided with a trust. It's important that it is approved by Supplemental Security Income, and I'll tell you, usually when SSI approves it, it is something that then would follow suit with the Medicaid program and the food stamp program, because those other kinds of federal dollar programs usually look to the requirements in the definition of financial eligibility under the SSI program, because it's one of the harder public dollars to qualify for. So that's one of the things that they look at. There are different kinds of trusts. There are family-type special needs trusts. There are court-ordered special trusts, and there are pooled trusts that do different kinds of things. I will tell you they are all legal documents, so they have to be administered or developed, not necessarily administered, but developed by attorneys or with the attorney's knowledge of and applying for so that it can be approved by the court system. Trusts are complicated. They're going to vary from state to state because they're state-specific, and you want to make sure that your attorneys set them up appropriately so they meet the Social Security, Supplemental Security income rules so that they can be approved. And we've given you a spotlight that belongs to the SSI website that you can actually go into to show that the special needs trusts do exist, and they will then provide approval to them if they meet the criteria. There are also financial literacy programs, and one of the concerns that the National Disability Institute has been looking at over time is people with disabilities, especially those folks who need to be on public benefits, tend to think about asset development or understanding financial issues or budgeting issues because they know that they're very limited in what they're allowed to do in order to maintain eligibility. And what we're trying to do by identifying these kinds of programs on today's call is that there are lots of opportunities for people who are on these public benefit programs to still be eligible and actually save money and should probably be trying to understand all of these things, and there are various programs to do that. And one of the ones that we are utilizing and we find very effective is the Money Smart program that belongs to FDIC. They will come out and they will help folks have certified individuals going out and being able to do these kinds of trainings. They come in multiple languages. They're in Braille. And anyone can go into this website that we've given to you and ask for a training to come to your community so that you can understand the financial literacy programs that are available. There's also a special section of the Money Smart curriculum that would apply to people with disabilities in terms of the access and information that public benefits and other kinds of programs might create difficulty for some folks to have savings. So there's a piece in Money Smart curriculum that addresses all of those pieces, and it's a great tool to become more fluent financially in what you can and cannot do. You can see the different Money Smart pieces about banking, about borrowing, how to choose a checking account, how to own a home, how to set up a budget, how to know what your rights are, and all of these pieces you will discover on that website in the previous slide. So we encourage you to go in and look at all of these modules to help people build a financial future with knowledge, with more confidence, to have them answer more questions, because there are a lot of folks with or without disabilities who tend not to go here thinking that they're not allowed to because they need to maintain eligibility, and so don't think about this when in fact there's so many tools that they would be able to access and be more financially self-sufficient and still be eligible for those other support programs that they do need. How can you assist with the asset development? First of all, the resources and how to facilitate this. And this is one of the pieces that we are interested in having you be aware of. A resource, as in your role that you're learning about, is the economic self-sufficiency and the community participation and choice that an individual might have. The encouragement of people become employees, to start to earn wages. It's very hard for any of us to save assets and accumulate things over time if we aren't earning wages to begin with. And how do we understand all of those connectors? How do we connect the dots? How do we understand all the eligibility criteria when we're trying to accomplish that? And you see here that there are programs. One of them one of the programs is using the one-stop centers. That's a federal term. Every state system has it. Again, I would encourage folks to go to their state websites, put in one-stop career centers, and you'll find that it may be called something different, but you'll understand that there are staff members who are there to help folks with some of these resources and also with employment, developing resumes. This program is a one-stop center that will provide a huge amount of resources to individuals who are seeking knowledge and employment. So I encourage folks to do that as well. You also can, a lot of the folks that are on this call are part of coalitions with local communities that are interested in knowledge on the disability side and encourage disability programs to become more knowledgeable on the asset side. And so you have these coalitions that you can participate in so that whether you're disability related or you're asset development related, who come together in a community to help build that bridge so that more people can be more knowledgeable about these programs. The REI Tour is in a huge number of cities. We've developed with the National Disability Institute and, of course, our major partner, the Internal Revenue Service, and all of our other funding partners that introduced to you by looking at the logo in one of the slides that she provided with the Bank of America, the Walmart, of course. It's important that you realize that this doesn't happen by itself, that it takes both sides, the disability arena and the asset development arena, to come together to make this work in communities. And so we've given you our web address so that you can go in and look at the activities that are occurring in a lot of these cities across the country. Again, the one-stop centers, they have the workforce investment counselors, and it's important that you'll notice that when you go into one of these one-stops, you might have someone from vocational rehabilitation, you might even have someone who is doing earned income credit preparation and hold a VITA site, voluntary income tax advocates that are on those sites at the one-stop centers. They would have individual employment counselors. They have folks there that could provide training and education for employment for certain criteria of skill building. It's important that that piece of the employment side is broader and bigger than just employment. It offers a one-stop center where someone can tap a lot of service and supports that individuals seeking employment might access. Okay, let's do a little bit of review, and then I'm going to open it up for questions because I know last time we had a lot of questions and we didn't quite have enough time. I also am willing to entertain questions from our first session if someone is interested in asking those questions, but also be aware that I will follow up and answer any outstanding questions that come in that we haven't been able to get to. I will get to and answer those questions as well. A review is, we talked about the Medicaid Buy-In program, which is a relatively it's probably not brand anymore, but it is probably the newest door into a Medicaid access program because you meet definition of disability and you have employment that you are interested in acquiring above and beyond what the limitations allow in both the disability insurance program and the SSI program, and also access to the Medicaid program in terms of also saving assets and still be accessing the health insurance Medicaid. So it's a new door. It is not the same kind of criteria that is required by SSI, so it's important that you look at that if someone in your community or you yourself or you know an individual who needs to have Medicaid coverage as an insurance but is interested in earning wages and having more assets. Earned income tax credits is important for individuals who are earning wages with and without disabilities to file your annual income tax to get your refund, and also so you have the opportunity to find out whether you're eligible for the additional tax refund under the earned income tax credit. The Work Opportunity Tax Credit is a federal tax available to private businesses so that they can get credit for hiring underserved populations in terms of employees. So that's a great program for encouragement to businesses to hire. The next one is the Individual Development Account, which is a matched savings program that encourages savings that will be matched by program dollars for saving for a home or for a small business or for education. Is a protected program, and it helps with you actually paying for those things that you're saving for. The Family Self-Sufficiency Program belongs to the Housing and Urban Development Program that encourages communities to help individuals and families who are receiving housing choice vouchers as a rent subsidy to set employment goals and advance their self-sufficiency in terms of reaching occupational objectives. Here is the contact information. You can see that the Social Security Administration's website is the first one. Again, I can't encourage you enough to use this as a resource for your first entry into your knowledge building on all the rules and regulations of the Social Security Administration, be it for you personally, if you're getting ready to reach retirement age, or you just want to know how much you have in your Title II trust in terms of what your future monthly cash payment might be under retirement. You can find all those things out personally. They have a new system where you can actually go in and get your credits and find out what you've done. You have my information and my email address. You have Elizabeth Jennings, who is the program coordinator, who also is very fluent in all of these rules and regulations and also the asset development program. Her email address is here as well. And then also Michael Rausch. Also, he is the REI Tour program director, and I have his email address here as well. That I will stop here, and I will now open it up to answering questions that people have. Again, if you are interested in answering questions or asking questions on this call, if you want to send your questions to either Nakia or to Katie, please do, and we can answer your questions that way as well.
This is Nakia. Katie, I'm going to feed the questions to you.
Okay,
question I had was, is there a comparable program to EITC for workers with disabilities over the age of 65?
That probably, not that I am aware of, but that would be more a question that someone would want to detail with the Internal Revenue Service, because again, the EITC program, the Earned Income Tax Credit program, belongs to the Internal Revenue Service. So it would be remiss of me, I am not aware of one off the top of my head, but I can tell you that if you go onto the IRS website and ask that question, they will be able to respond to that question and answer to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Katie. So here's another question from Howard. When it comes to PASS for SSDI clients, the client has $2,000 in SSDI and $6,000 in wages. With her IRWE or PASS, and what can she exclude? Also has Medicaid Buy-In. Does she remain with $2,000 limit? Please explain, and they would like to request documents for this.
Oh, that's a question. Okay, first of all, it's important to be aware that there's a very big difference between the Plan for Achieving Self-Support and an impairment-related work expense, which were the two things, and she asked which would be better. First of all, be aware that all of the work incentives that belong to both disability insurance and the SSI program are individually applied, and a person could qualify for all of them. If they meet the qualifiers and the criteria for each one of them provides a different incentive. So you could have multiple incentives working at the same time. The Plan for Achieving Self-Support is a savings program that belongs to SSI. So in order to qualify to use the Plan for Achieving Self-Support, a person must be or become eligible for SSI to use it. So someone who is receiving disability insurance is medically eligible for SSI, might not be financially eligible. So I could write a plan for achieving self-support. At the same time, I'm trying to financially qualify for SSI by using my disability insurance money as what I'm going to use in the plan for achieving self-support to save, and SSI wouldn't count it. Now, again, it's a complicated program. I am happy to help someone understand that in more detail offline because it is complicated. You could write a plan for achieving self-support, and if a person who is earning wages is paying for their own supports out of their own pocket, so paying for your copays for your medications or paying for your specialized transportation, you're paying for those on your own, that's an impairment-related work expense. You can do that as well as applying for a plan for achieving self-support. Or didn't qualify for the PASS plan doesn't mean that you wouldn't qualify for an impairment-related work expense. Also, there's a time limit on PASS plan because you're required to give them a time of execution and completion. An impairment-related work expense can be forever. As long as you maintain your eligibility and you're earning wages and you have these out-of-pocket expenses, you have an impairment-related work expense use. There's one other piece to that question that I can't remember what you had said, Katie. But
she also has Medicaid Buy-In. Does she remain with 2,000 limits?
Well, first of all, if you have a Medicaid Buy-In and you're in a particular state, you'd want to know, based on the state that you're living in, what is your resource limitation? Because Medicaid Buy-In, part of the value of that particular Medicaid door was to allow a person to earn more wages annually and to save more money in the asset category. So I can't tell you if you're in a state where you're still required to have that $2,000 limit or not. But if you send me an email and tell me the state that you're living in, I would be happy to do the research for you to find out what your limitation is under the Medicaid Buy-In program in the state you're living in.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sharon. And then I'm assuming if he wants written documentation, we can help him with that as well.
Okay, thank you.
My question was for Matt, and it says, Sharon, you mentioned that you can make, quote, a good amount of money, unquote, under student earned income exclusion, but not mention how much you could make. What is the amount you can make under the SEIE using your benefit?
Okay. First of all, the reason I didn't mention a number is because it changes annually. So this year it's $1,700 annually, or monthly, and it's a little more than $7. You know what? If you give me 2 seconds, I will tell you exactly what that amount is. But it's an annual number, and it usually is from, it's not usually, it is from January to December, so the number changes in January, starting in January. So a person could actually start over again if they're still continuing to be a student in the next calendar year. And I will tell you that in 2012, the student earned income exclusion monthly amount maximum is $1,700, and the annual limit is $6,840, and that is in 2012. So a student can earn from January to December $6,840 for any of their SSI. And if they're entitled to the full federal benefit rate of $698, then actually earn $6,840 a year in 2012 and not have any of their $698 taken away from them in a month. Now, aware, though, they still can't save any more money than, if they're 18 years or older, more than $2,000. So, and as an example, so you can understand the link, I could be using the student earned income exclusion work incentive, and I also might want to start thinking about developing a plan for achieving self-support to help me save money to help me reach for my occupational objective. So I might want to save to go to a community college or to a university and use my income, because it's not affecting my SSI payment of $698, so I can continue to still use my $698 to live on and save what I'm earning in wages and have it protected in a plan for achieving self-support to help me reach my occupational objective. So there's two examples of two different work incentives that can be used simultaneously.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Another question from Marnie. How about saving for purchasing a home? It is my understanding this does not currently exist.
Didn't hear what the last part was that you said, Katie.
Understanding that it does not currently exist about saving for purchasing a home.
Well, under IDA programs, under a federal IDA program, that is still one of the categories that's allowed under that asset for independence. Now, it's important to be aware that a particular IDA program in a local community may not have that as part of their program. So a local IDA program in a community could say, we're not going to go after the one for saving for homes. We're only going to go after small business or saving for secondary education. So it's not a requirement of a provider to have participants save for all three. They can limit which savings programs they want to participate with. So maybe that in the area that she's in, they aren't allowed to save for a home because that particular local program does not have that as part of their submission that they made to the federal system. From program to program, whether they use all three, whether they limit it to one of the three, whether they limit to two of the three. So it's going to vary from program to program. So that may be what she's experiencing.
Next from Katie Davis. I tried to ask this question last session, but would like to ask again. Restrictions as to who can apply for SSDI or SSI based on immigration status? Are these programs only for citizens, or can permanent residents or other legal residents apply?
Okay. First of all, remember that the Social Security Disability Insurance Program is based on a work history. If a person is in this country and they have a Social Security number and they're working under a Social Security number, a portion of their income is being put into the Title II trust. So it's the Title II trust and the work history that drives eligibility to the disability insurance program. Now, the SI program is different because it's a need-based program and it's based on federal income tax. So there are different criteria for immigration and eligibility to SSI. And I will be very honest with you. There are variations of immigration categories that you could be eligible for an SSI payment, and then there are other categories of immigration that you cannot be eligible for an SSI payment. So in order for someone to become more fluent in what those immigration categories are, I encourage you to go to the Social Security Administration's website, and in their search engine, identify immigration categories, and it will come up with the various categories of immigration that the Social Security Administration reviews and looks at. Can't give a specific answer because it depends on how the person entered into the country and what their status is. I hope that.
Thanks, Sharon.
Sure.
Next one is from Matt as well. Does the income tax credit apply to parents of college students? And can you please explain more about the earned income tax credit, go into a little more detail?
First of all, the earned income tax credit belongs to the worker who's earned the income. So not going to apply to parents, other than if they're earning income on their own Social Security number and meet the criteria to apply for the earned income tax credit. So a family member, a parent not going to get an earned income tax credit because they've got a son or daughter who's earning wages. The son or daughter is going to apply for the earned income tax credit. It belongs to the wage earner. So, and it also has annual qualifying numbers. It also has age criteria. You're not required to be married, but you are required to meet the age criteria and the amount of earned income limitations maximums in a calendar year. If you were to go onto the Internal Revenue Service website, which is www.irs.gov, it's .gov, then you go in and you can actually put in their search engine earned income tax credit, and they will give you the annual numbers. They'll follow the annual numbers. I would encourage someone to look at 2011, 2010, and 2009 because you can go back 3 years to claim an earned income tax credit, up to 3 years.
Next, Susie. My son is entering a transition program. He is 18 and has to receive an SSI award of $464. It seems to me that the transition program is an excellent resource to develop a suitable path plan for my son. Your thoughts, please.
She's correct, and remember too that in order to write a plan for achieving self-support, a person must be earning and receiving something other than just the SSI payment. So based on the question, her getting ready to receive an award and getting an amount of $400 plus SSI payment. A person cannot use the SSI amount to save in a plan for achieving self-support. So the transition program that the person is going to go into may be encouraging someone to go out and earn wages. So let's say the person goes out and earns wages in this example. First of all, I would apply for that particular student earned income exclusion. So that would be one work incentive that I would encourage you to look a little bit more about. It's not difficult to apply for, but I also will tell you there's no form, so that becomes a little of an aggravation to someone to fill out because there isn't really a form, but you can find out what the rules are. And then if your family member is interested in saving for an occupation that they're interested in, they can use the wages that they're earning and save that, and then SSI will not count it anyway because, first of all, you're using the student earned income exclusion, but when you're on SSI, you can't have any more than $2,000 saved in a given month. But if you have a plan for achieving self-support, the money that you're saving can go in there, and the plan for achieving self-support is a protected program. I'm not going to count that as an asset. So I have two opportunities at this moment to find out a little bit more about. One is the student earned income exclusion, and the other is an occupational objective and the use of the plan for achieving self-support.
Thank you, Erin. More. From Did, if a person has a Janus fund and receives Medicaid, will this affect his Medicaid benefits, and so will this affect his SSI benefits?
What was the first part of the question, Katie?
If a person has a Janus, J-N-U-S fund.
Okay, yep. Go ahead, sorry.
Medicaid, will it affect his Medicaid benefits, and then will it affect his SSI benefits?
Depends on how much is in that fund. You're allowed to have up to $2,000 or $3,000 if you're married. But remember that limitation is all your accumulation of dollars together. So you have a savings account and you have a certificate deposit and you have a Janus account, you have a 401k account. It would be all those accounts together that have money in it that cannot go over that $2,000 or $3,000 limit. Now, you'd have to also understand the rules to access that amount of money. And if you get denied access because you don't qualify to draw from the money, so it's not an emergency, I don't know all of the details and rules on the Janus program, but there's a way that you can access it. You might take a penalty. Now, find that SSI and all those other benefit programs who have limitations to them don't care if you take the penalty. What you have to do is get denied access. So if no one will allow you to touch the money, it won't count because you can't get your hands on it to use it. Remember that SSI is a supplement. You have other funds that can help you pay for your utilities and your food and your rent. SSI is going to require you to use that money first, and then they will supplement you. You can't get your hands on the money, then you can't use it for food and utilities and rent. So that's your SSI. I hope.
Thank you. Now from Cindy, if you currently own a home, would you have to sell your home to be able to get SSI? I'm wanting to know what happens now that I had to quit work. Currently, I'm 55 and am now on SSDI.
There's two parts to this question. First of all, SSI excludes someone who owns a home as long as what you own you're living in. So if you're living in your home and you want to try to apply for SSI, they will not count the home you're living in. So it's an excludable asset. That's on the exclusion list. But I will tell you, if you are receiving a disability insurance payment, so you're eligible for DI, you are medically eligible for SSI. The question would be for you to ask yourself, are you financially eligible? So it would determine how much money you're getting every month from disability insurance and whether or not you would qualify for a cash payment of SSI. So it may not be resources that would make you ineligible for SSI. It may be just the amount of the cash payment that you're receiving from DI that is high enough that would disqualify you from a cash payment of SSI. But you are medically eligible for SSI, but you may not be financially eligible.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to over to Zakia. She has a few more questions for you. We have about 10 minutes left.
Okay.
I have a couple questions, Sharon. Are stipends earned through AmeriCorps volunteering counted as income that will decrease your SSI cash payment? I heard that they were not.
That is correct. And I will tell you, if you have concerns about local field offices with the Social Security Administration and they're requiring you to report your wages, which they do, and they start counting AmeriCorps stipends, if you go onto the Social Security Administration's website and you put in what's called AmeriCorps rules, you'll go to a section of the website that will give you the actual regulations on AmeriCorps, and you could print those out so that if you ever have a concern or you come up against the Social Security Administration counting those stipend wages, you would have the regulation ready at your fingertips, show to them. Aware that so Social Security Administration field offices get a lot of questions and they have to be fluent in everything, and sometimes they're not as fluent in certain regulations at their fingertips, and so they're going to do the same thing I'm suggesting that you do, is looking at the regulations. And when you can do that for them and hand it to them, they go, oh, thanks, and they won't count the AmeriCorps stipend wages. But you're correct. AmeriCorps has, the Social Security Administration, as a matter of fact, I want to say about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, came out with an actual regulation regarding AmeriCorps stipends.
Thank you. Next question. What would be the best place to go to get support in working through some of these wonderful opportunities you've discussed today? My son does not have a case manager through the State Developmental Disability System. It does not meet the criteria for a cognitive delay, but he still has a significant physical delay.
I wish I could be more positive about this, but I could have given you resources depending on what state you're in, and I'm going to encourage you to still go to this resource because they have been able to continue the activities prior to a certain date. There are programs that the Social Security Administration set up, and it has been around for about 10 years, called the Work Incentives Planning and Assistance. Every state in the union had local community providers who were certified experts that would help somebody understand in more detail all these programs that I've talked about in both the first session and in this session. Really, the funding for this particular program has been stopped. So you've these experts out there in your communities who may have been picked by other organizations. I recommend that, and I don't know how old your son or daughter is, but in the developmental disability system in every state, they may have the access to those experts that were there. I will tell you it would be more likely to make communication to the one-stop centers that we talked about earlier in this session. They have access your state vocational rehabilitation system may have access to some of those experts that they could refer you to. I wish I could tell you that that program is still intact because it was a wonderful program. It did what it was supposed to do, but the funding for that program, and so these folks that are certified experts now are probably being picked up other organizations and agencies because their expertise is phenomenal, and it's a serious need in all the communities. I wish I could be, if you send me an email with the state that you're in, I will see if I can find you those access to those resources. I'm happy to do that.
Thanks, Sharon. If an individual gets SSDI through their parent, are their wages affected? What about that individual married? Does income or assets of your spouse affect SSDI payment or Medicare? And
okay.
withdrawal, okay. And one more.
Okay.
Are withdrawals from special needs trusts considered assets? So let's back through the first question. If an individual gets SSDI through their parent, are the wages affected?
Whose wages are we talking about? Are we talking about the individual who is receiving the disability insurance payment from their parent, or the question regarding the parent? First of all, if I'm on SSDI and I'm getting that DI payment because my parental work history opened and I'm now qualified to draw from my parental work history, if I, the beneficiary on DI, goes out and earns wages, the wages rules apply to me who's on disability insurance, not to the parent's wage history that I'm using. An individual who's getting DI from a parental work history and I go out and go to work, yes, the wage rules for disability insurance would apply to me. So that's the one question.
Okay. Then is, if that individual marries, does the income or assets of the spouse affect SSDI payment or Medicare?
Okay, if we're still talking about the person who's receiving DI from a parental work history, so I'm a disabled adult child, if I get married, I am married to someone who is not receiving a like benefit from a Title II trust, and those kinds of benefits would be DI, it would be retirement. If I marry someone who's receiving a Title II trust benefit, someone who is not receiving a Title II trust benefit, I sever my connection to my parental work history. It has nothing to do with what my spouse brings to the table in terms of wages or assets. There is no asset limitation to disability insurance. But if I am a disabled adult child and I'm receiving DI in that category, and I marry somebody who is not receiving a Title II trust payment, I will lose my parental connection as long as I stay married. If I get divorced or I get an annulment from that spouse I'm married to, I then could possibly go back on my disabled adult child parental work history benefit. But it has nothing to do with assets or income that my spouse brings to the table. It's what my spouse looks like in terms of the Title II trust.
Thank you. And question, are withdrawals from a special needs trust considered assets?
Not disability insurance. There is no asset limitations on disability insurance payments.
Okay. And I'm assuming that this question is related to the SIE. Does student have to be full-time? Does junior college count?
It depends on the designation of a community college. I encourage folks who are going to a community college or to a university to register with Disabled Student Services. Just about every community college and university in the country has a office of disability services on the campus. If I get a letter from that office saying that 6 units notes me as considering to be a full-time student, given the nature of my disability, then the Social Security Administration Student Earned Income Exclusion would accept that and consider that individual a full-time student. So that designation becomes a piece of documentation that helps prove your student income exclusion status.
But it does have to be full-time?
Based on what designation is of that particular community college, yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily mean 12 units. It might mean 9 units. It might mean 6 units. So it's a designation that considers me a full-time student that I get from Disabled Student Services that I would then pass on to the Social Security Administration, so they would use that to determine that I'm considered a full-time student based on that designation.
Great, thank you. That was the last question.
Okay.
Well, Sharon, thanks, Tia.
You're welcome.
Anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, other than we will accept, questions by email if someone wants more specific information in a more personal way, because I know it's hard to ask questions that are very specific to a personal scenario. It's been my pleasure to provide you with this information. I know it was a lot of information in both sessions, and I encourage you to do more education in terms of websites that we've given to you, certainly using the Social Security Administration's website, and also going to your Medicaid, your state Medicaid system to determine what the different doors are into Medicaid and what the qualifiers are. The only way we're going to learn this stuff is to educate ourselves and be more fluent so that we can protect either family members or ourselves when we're trying to accomplish both employment and asset development. You're welcome.
I just want to remind everyone that our next webinar will be on August 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The topic will be preparing for VITA 2013, Access and Accommodations. Myself and Kim Hamilton with the Southeast DebTAC will be the presenters. So again, we encourage you to register. The invitation will be coming out next week. If you're not already signed up to receive our email notifications, please send me an email or to Nakia, and we'll make sure we get you on our listserv. If you check out any of our future webinars or any of our archive webinars, such as today in Part 1, you can do it by accessing our website, again, www.realeconomicimpact.org. Again, I want to remind you that you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Flickr, and Tumblr, all of the social media sites. We'd be happy to have you follow us. And we again want to thank our sponsors and our presenter today, Sharon, for all the wonderful information that we were able to go over, and we know we had a lot of questions, and as Sharon said, please, if you have any that come up, either personal or general questions, to email them to any of us, and we'll be happy to get that information back to you as soon as possible. So thank you again. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Nakia, and thank you for everyone that joined us today, and we look forward to having you on future webinars. Have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.